If you're watching this video, you're about to find out an unstoppable machine, and no, it isn't your bog standard T95. This is an experimental equipment build that I've decided to play with, considering how often we use the exact same pieces of equipment thinking that it is the best. But I've actually found something for the T95, which is the Tech Tree Tier 9 vehicle from the American line that is of course a tank destroyer and relies on super hard armor to be able to push forward and dominate opponents. However, in these gameplays, or at least the gameplay that we have for today, we use a completely different build on the T95 that I'm entirely not used to, and that involves something that cannot be stopped. This is the repair build, and of course the maximum repair build that you can possibly use to put the tracks back on and ensure that you don't get caught out by someone tracking you and keeping you locked in place, and essentially meaning that you can just charge forward at everyone that you meet. So this is going to be an amazing one to showcase some weird equipment setups, and I want to try more like this because often we get caught up in trying to have the most competitive tank loadout every single time, but sometimes you want to try something cool, and that's exactly what we tried with this one. So equipment wise, if we're trying to go for a build that essentially is going to put the tracks back on as quickly as possible so we can go forward, we can avoid being tracked for periods of time, people coming around behind us, and just enabling us to play more like a brawling tank destroyer that has a ton of armor. When you keep the frontal armor towards the opponent, you can use the T95 in this way. So advanced repair system gives us a repair time of 25% less, which means straight out the bat, if we have a 1 second repair time, now granted most things are not 1 second to repair, it's probably more like 4 or 5 seconds roughly to be able to repair. If we did have a 1 second repair time, you would take 0.75 seconds to actually repair. So it is a big boost to repairing all of the modules, which includes the tracks. And then what you can do is you can add on track durability. Now what this does is enable your modules, which include the tracks, to be able to be repaired faster, but also because of this durability, you're going to take a lot more shots to actually track you. So that means 50% more track health. And if you go to the module viewer, hopefully it does actually showcase it. It doesn't, but of course, either way, you get module health on your modules. So this means that depending on what tank you're playing, dependent on how Wargaming have set up the modules, you will take module damage, which you can determine from the in-depth statistics. You'll see that there is a damage and a module damage. So for example, the T95 here does 750 actual damage, but it does 210 module damage. So if you want to track someone, the bigger the caliber of your gun, the more likely you are to track. But dependent on how quickly you reload, maybe you can get off multiple shots for every one big tank can hit you in the tracks. So what you want to do is boost up the overall health of your track so you can take more shells. And that means that people can't just one shot track you, and often they're going to actually have to hit you 3 times in the tracks to be able to actually track you when you are using this equipment, which does come in useful when you're in a repair build and when you're trying to keep moving forward. Now, if we wanted to go full blown completely crazy, we could remove the advanced loader, but this sacrifices a huge amount of DPM, which I don't think is actually worth it, to be able to go for improved ventilation, which boosts up our crew performance, which includes repair speed. It does increase our DPM as well, so it won't be as much of a big issue with DPM. So you could potentially, if you want to min-max this in terms of repairing and just going forward, you could use improved ventilation, but for the most part I don't think it is actually worth it. So advanced loader gonna boost up our DPM instead. Now if we wanted to make it faster, you could do that with traction system or advanced powertrain, but unfortunately the T95 has one of the worst power to weight ratios of 8.89, which means even if you increase the speed by 10%, you're not really going to be able to get up to that top speed anyway, or at least it's going to take you so long that most of the time you won't be able to get there, so it's kind of an irrelevant point using it for just just the speed. The only advantage would be the chassis and hull rotation speed, so you turn quicker, which is a big benefit for a tank that has such a terrible hull rotation speed of 18 degrees a second. So this is a big thing that you could use, but even then it's only a minor change and it's certainly not going to make you turn like an absolute demon. So I don't think that it is entirely worth it. I'd rather have the DPM. So that's how we set up the tank in terms of the loadout, but commander skills are where this thing can really take off in terms of repair speed. So with the commander build, usually I would never say to pick these perks, or at least these skills when it comes to playing a tank like this, because overall the situations where it becomes useful are limited and there's only certain games where it's going to work out. So what you want to do is make your skills and equipment as kind of generic, where they're used every single game, as opposed to situational skills and perks which are only very minor or going to be major boosts but in very small situations, so they don't crop up very often, so it kind of wastes that slot even though they could be good in a minor situation or better than a generic slot. So with this build, we are going for the full situational build. We are running with the standard perks for the initial bit, which includes situational awareness. We've got Sixth Sense and Born Leader, some of the biggest perks. We've got rapid loading for increased DPM as well. So you want all of those four, including steady aim as well as the fifth. So Sixth Sense, steady aim, rapid loading, Born Leader and situational awareness are a good solid 5 first perks to get on any vehicle that you play, and then from there you can kind of branch out. We've gone with run and gun so that when we're moving we get increased accuracy, because I'm hoping that we're going to keep moving around, we're going to keep turning, and that's going to give us increased accuracy when we're doing that by 10%, which is basically going to mean that we don't bloom out as much when we are moving, and therefore we can aim in quicker. So that's kind of how it works. The overall aiming circle is what will reduce by 10% when we're using our tank on the move, which means we start off from a smaller circle, which means we don't have to aim as long, so the aiming speed is better. This is one of the common things that people get wrong when it comes to World of Tanks. They try and improve the aiming speed when realistically you should try and improve the overall accuracy of the tank, so the actual circle size, whether you're moving or whether you're stationary, and that's going to mean that you can aim much better in every sense of the word, and of course in doing so you're going to make your aiming speed to get to a good level of accuracy much better. Then we've got General Mechanic. This is going to increase our repair speed of all damage modules. This includes tracks. So what we want to do is boost up our track health and track repair speed, which we've done so far, and this only boosts the repair speed by 10%. So this is probably the least useful perk out of all of them, as it's really a very small minor boost to your track repair speed. What does make a massive difference is the track mechanic, which gives you a 25% increase to track repair speed. So combine that with all of the other perks and equipment and skills, or whatever you want to call them, in the game that we already have on this tank. It means that we have probably in the region of about a 70 to 80% boost to our repair speed of our tracks, which is huge. It's going to be massive in terms of boosting up that repair speed, and probably may even be higher than this if you take into account things like Born Leader, which increase your crew performance and the skill effectiveness. So every single one that we have will be boosted by 10%. So for example, our track mechanic will actually have an additional 2.5% increase to track repair speed, because it's 10% of 25%, which gives us 2.5%. Add that on to 27.5% increased track repair speed. That's how it works. Same with General Mechanic, it will give us 10% of 10%, which is 1%, which gives us 11% total repair speed. So that's how Born Leader really does compound the more perks and skills that you have. So you want to make sure that when you're using Born Leader, you get it from the start, because it gives you 10% crew performance, and then as you get more perks, it becomes even more effective as a perk. So yeah, definitely have Born Leader as your second skill or perk in the game. For those of you who are older, you know them as perks. Of course, if you're newer, they're skills now. So yeah, people always get confused or like to call me out on it, but it's for just general inclusiveness for veterans and of course newer players to understand what we're going on about. Of course, then we've got armor angling. Now, armor angling is just reducing the base damage that we're taking. So if someone has 100 damage, we would essentially take 95 damage on average. Obviously, people can high roll, people can low roll. It just decreases that damage whether they high roll or low roll by 5%. So the maximum high roll that they can do is 5% lower. The minimum low roll is 5% lower. So for 100, you would essentially end up at 95, and then you would be looking in the region of about 115 damage is the maximum that you take, or 120 or something like that. And then, of course, you would go down as far as about 70 damage as the lowest you could take, because it's plus or minus 25% on the damage is your maximum and minimum rolls on your tank. So that's just another bit of information. It seems very statisticky. It's really not that difficult when you get into it, and you'll understand it when you see it in the game. It just reduces the amount of damage we're going to take, and that is a big thing for when you're playing in a tank that is relying on its armor and just staying alive to be able to outdo everyone else in the game. So let's jump into the gameplay and see exactly how this weird build managed to have one of the best results in the T95 that I've had in the longest time. And of course, this game is on Mountain Pass. And what is really strange about this game is that I was expecting to lose from the very beginning, and that is down to one particular thing in this game: the enemy team. There were 3 players from one of the most competitive clans in the game, which is Chile, and so I really wanted to show them that having 4,000 average WN8 in a month is not going to help you out when it comes to the T95. And so let's see whether we can make it work. We have YJLBLBKA in the T54 lightweight, who is the light tank, and we have a T54 who is also in that clan. So those are 2 of the vehicles that we've got to come up against and beat in this game if we want to win the game. We also have a Conway who is also in the Chile clan as well. So all of these players are exceptional players for sure. They have very good statistics, but does it actually translate when you come up against the T95, and can they make their own tanks work to counter this vehicle? Well, I guess we'll only have to see, and this is going to be an interesting one. And it's always good when you come up against experienced players, people who somewhat know what they're doing, at least from a statistics standpoint. That will always feel really nice. Now, we take a shot here, but of course, being in the T95, we bounce a round. Now, we can see that it is coming in. I'm going to go for the shot here. Can we get it? Yes, we can. We hit the T54 there, which means we're up to 700 damage so far. A nice little beginning to the game, especially when it's one of the more competitive players in this game. So, with that being said, you can see that the western side of the map is absolutely clogged with enemy tanks, which means we are going to have a bit of a problem in just a second. But what I want to do is help out our T54 lightweight here just a little bit to avoid this little rat in the Centurion just YOLOing on down. So let's try and get rid of him. We pop 1 round into him, he gets finished off, but it's probably going to be the end of our T54 lightweight. Maybe, but you can see here the T54 does indeed finish off the T54 lightweight, and so we just have to back it up. There is no point in me being here, and in fact we're quite exposed, so we want to limit down the amount of times we're going to get hit. We of course bounce off of one of the least kind of bouncy tanks in the game, essentially the T54E1, or at least a variant of it, the tier 8 version. And so now we find ourselves a Conway. This is not the Chile clan Conway that we might hope it was, dealing 700 damage to him, but in fact another Conway. So with that being said, the game is looking awful. I mean, we are down by 2 tanks. The enemy team have like tons and tons of the map in their control. We have a lot of teammates who are kind of pushing individually or in a pair against multiple tanks, which is never good. You've got me who's sat here up against some of the more competitive players who are definitely going to know the weak points of the T95. But of course what we're doing here is just basically reversing and making sure we hide our vehicle when we can. We come around this corner and we find ourselves a T-54 who we put one into and finish off one of the first of the Chile clan members, which is brilliant. And now we're down up against a ISU. I'm trying to raise up my gun here, try and avoid getting hit by the ISU because he could pen me quite easily and take a lot of my health in this game. We try and go for a shot on the E75, but unfortunately the T95 doesn't have the best arc that we have in the game, which means I miss a shell there. That could have quite easily been another damaging shot. And of course, with the amount of damaging shots that we could have had in this game, given that we bounced off of the little tier 8 autoloader, yeah, a bit of a pain. So with that being said, I am going to turn for the T-54 lightweight. This is a very crucial thing in this game. We need to get him out of the game. If he's behind me, he's just going to constantly peg me. So that's not what we want. So we actually finish him off, picking up 4.8 thousand damage and securing this flank a little bit more. So hopefully we can actually do something. But with that all being said, it's been pretty hectic to begin with in this game. So what am I doing here? Well, the E75 is still over to my right. So what we need to do is go and try and push the advantage to this guy and help out the team as much as possible. So what I do is I'm trying to use the Borsig as a lower plate. Now, the T95 is quite tall to a degree, and of course one of the weak points being the lower plate. It's quite small weak point, but it is a weak point. So what do? Well, let's push towards these guys. And with the lower plate, or the Borsig as I like to call it, we are not going to get penned in the bottom of this tank. It's only really the cupolas of the vehicle that are going to be a problem. Now, I don't really want to push on my own against this convoy. He could get around the side of me and there's going to be no team support. And when you only have 18 degrees a second rotation on this tank, it could be quite easy for him to hit me a couple times and I'm out of the game. So with the T95, you really need to pick and choose your engagements, and that is exactly what we're intending here. But at this point, it's time to push towards this convoy. We're putting our gun in the air to avoid being hit in the cupola. It can cause a bounce occasionally. If someone's good at aiming, they will be able to hit your cupola regardless, but it gives us an additional chance of bouncing. Now, my lower plate here, or the Borsig, is going to be a bit of a pain, but we turn to the side. The ISU 152 is firing HE for some unbeknownst reason to me. I don't quite know why he would do that, but we're going after the little sweat in his convoy here. He does hit us once, but it hits the kind of less or very well angled area of the armor. It is a weak point sometimes, but he's so close now that he can just hit me in the cupola. But we're going to try and get around the side, and we do, and we manage to hit his engine deck, which picks up the 5th enemy of this game. But there is still a very healthy E75 in this game, and we're only on 640 hit points. So how are we going to actually win this game? Well, it comes down to trying to use our teammates and working together. So with that being said, we should be able to win this game as long as the team don't try and throw this game all away. So with the E75 poking this ridge, the KV4 definitely shouldn't have been where he was. He needed to make sure that he'd pushed up to further over so that the E75 couldn't use his gun depression and peek him. But either way, now we've got to try and deal with the job. And of course we bounce off of the cupola. Brilliant. Always what you want when you're playing in this sort of close game, to be bouncing off of easy targets like that. But now we're having the problem of being up the slope and the E75 being on top of the slope, where we can't actually hit this guy very easily. We've got a tank that is on the bridge, who hopefully our teammate will finish off. He is the T69. Now the T69 does have an autoloader, but it is a very minimal autoloader. It's quite low alpha and isn't really the biggest threat in the game. And when we have such good armor and the pen on the T69 is pretty bad, we should be able to make it work. Now we put one round into the cupola of the E75, which actually works. Brilliant. That is what we wanted all this time. So the E75, rather than trying to ram me, he does actually make the good play of going around the side, but he has HE loaded. Yeah, I don't know why, but he does. And that means that this gives us a free shot into the side of him. He over angles and we go straight through the side, picking up 6.2 thousand damage and the 6th enemy of this game. You'll note that we haven't actually been tracked very often in this tank, and even when we have, we repair so quickly that you probably don't even realise. So we're not limited by being tracked so much in this tank, which definitely has an advantage. Is it the best advantage ever? Maybe not, but it definitely is an advantage. Now, I try and ping to our teammate in the light tank to go and get in their base, but he doesn't want to do that, and instead we're going to have to fight the T28, who we pen in the top of the tank, the Cupola. But we've now got a medium tank behind us, so quick, get down. Oh, the T28 bounces off of us, the T69 can't quite get the shot onto us, and we go for a shot onto the Cupola with 390 pen, and of course it doesn't actually pen. Brilliant, just what I wanted when we're in this such a clutch situation. We can't hit the Cupola, this guy's pushed right into me, he raises his gun, which means his mantlet goes up, and now we've got a T69 coming from behind. I try an angle to a degree, but it really isn't going to make much of a difference, and we end up losing the game. What we could have done with was the light tank not trying to run away to the other side, and that would have given us a lot better of a chance to actually win this game, and he may have been able to hold off the T69 just that little bit longer so that we could finish off the T28 and then give a turn towards the essentially T69, and then we may have won the game. But given that we had such a great result, 6.9 thousand damage with 4,000 blocked and 6 enemies taken out, I don't think we can really complain all too much. And it was actually in the end the T69 that we bounced off of once that actually ended up finishing us off, and he would have been actually removed from the game if we didn't bounce that shot at the beginning. So yeah, I basically lost because I bounced off of a tank that you probably should never bounce off of with 320 pen, but either way, I'm not going to complain all too much, and it definitely worked with this build. I really enjoyed playing it. It was a new experience, and certainly it was better and more fun when it comes to being brawlery than it is to play the T95 as a hidden stealthy vehicle that it can certainly do. But either way, yeah, a brilliant game in a brilliant matchup, which was tough, but we won against some of the other players on the team, but we just didn't win in total. With that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure you try out the T95 with this, or at least give me some ideas as to other vehicles you'd like me to try out with various different equipment setups that aren't the usual bog standard most competitive matchups and loadouts that we usually see in the tanks. If you have any kind of ones in particular, let me know in the comments. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, like it, and if you want to support me more than you already do by just watching and liking and enjoying the content, and yeah, then you can always join the channel as a member, and when we do some live streams, you can join in with the live streams. You can hit the join button. It will allow me to continue creating content on premium vehicles, and just yeah, it allows me to do what I do, and I can't thank enough all of the channel members that we already have, and of course you who watch the videos as well, as it massively helps me out. But other than that, hopefully you have a great rest of the day, and I'll join me back in the next one. Goodbye.